Okay. Hello guys, we are now live. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to our traditional live stream, which is every Tuesday, 12 p.m. California time, or whatever time zone you are in right now. I'm currently in Russia, and this is actually my last 2017. This would be my last stream from Russia because next Tuesday I will be streaming from Italy, and then I will be streaming from San Francisco. Yeah, I see a lot of people joining from chat, from okay, let me see what else we have here. Hi. Yeah, I actually caught a flu here in Russia, and my voice sounds a little weird. Yesterday I couldn't talk at all. So this webinar I will be doing together with our teacher Anastasia. She is, I think she's one of the best teachers, TOEFL teachers I've ever met, and this is based on my personal experience with her and based on we're getting. Her background is she actually graduated from Boston University, which is one of the top universities in the United States. She scored 119 out of 120 on TOEFL. If you remember, I scored 117, so like 119 is something extremely amazing for me. And she also trains a lot of students to TOEFL, brush up their English. She also prepares for, helps people prepare for IELTS. So she will be talking about her experience today, and we'll also have some Q&A in the end. And while we're all like gathering here, I just wanted to mention more countries that we have. We have India, as always, a lot of Indian people. We have Pakistan, we have Moscow and Ukraine. We have Virginia. Hi, Paul. Are you taking TOEFL in Virginia? Hi from Denmark. That's amazing. Colombia, Kazakhstan, Japan. Good morning. Oh, wow. It's already morning in Japan. I remember last time I streamed, you said it was like 5 a.m. in the morning. I think it's really early, right? Vietnam. Amazing, amazing geography. Welcome, welcome, guys. Everyone's welcome. So yeah, the topic today is TOEFL exam, and we're going to be talking about Anastasia's experience. And she scored 119, and she's going to talk about her student's experience, and she's going to give you some background and some general information on the exam. So yeah, let's welcome Anastasia. She is here. Hello.
Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm very excited to share my tips and tricks for scoring 119 out of 120 on TOEFL. So in case you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask them, and I will be answering them in the second part of our webinar. And actually, truth to be told, I didn't invest much time into my preparation, since it was quite a spontaneous. It turned out that I could either sit an exam like in 5 days or wait for about a month. So as I was quite pressed for time, I opted for the first time there was having this 5 days to prepare for the test. As possible, and finally, as a result, I scored like 30 out of 30 for reading, listening, and speaking sections, and I also got 29 out of 30 for the writing section. So the first thing that you are going to be taking TOEFL is that TOEFL is mostly all about the vocabulary. So it means that all these 4 sections, they depend on how many words you know. So if you are, for example, aiming at 110 and higher on TOEFL, it means that you have to make sure that your English level is about advanced and that you are able to grasp the idea of scientific articles about physics or biology, or, for instance, talk about psychological disorders without much problems. So thus, as vocabulary is the key point, I first iterate on reading and listening sections first, and meanwhile you will be able to improve and expand your understanding of the common topics on TOEFL. Like, for example, natural disasters, I don't know, archaeological excavations, environment, pollution, etc. So this was what I did when I first took like my TOEFL test. For topics that one can see on TOEFL, and I refreshed my knowledge of them. So it means like I used, as for scientific areas, I used Khan Academy, which provides you with lots of different videos created for high school students, and I was able to optimize my knowledge of the subject. So as for social sciences, well, professional disciplines like anthropology, marketing, like architecture, I put to use TED Talks, and that proved out to be very helpful, like extremely helpful for me. So what I did was that I listened to this TED Talks. Like, for example, I chose one video, I listened to it, and then while I was listening or watching, it depended. So I wrote down the unfamiliar words, and then I translated them, and then I listened once again to the same report. And this time I was trying to spot out the context. So it's immensely helpful because I got to know so many new words, so many new vocabulary. And besides, I also got to know how they're used in context. Because if you're simply going to write down a word on a piece of paper and then forget it, it's, well, maybe it's going to be useful for reading, maybe you will remember it in the listening, but of course it will do you no good if you are taking, I don't know, writing section or speaking sections, where you actually need to know how to employ this word in context. So what I also did, I actually read a few articles from New York Times like every day. So as I had only 5 days to prepare, it was like 5 or 6 articles for me. But if you have more than several days to prepare, of course, it can be like 1 article a day. It will be more than enough. So I know it may all sound a little bit dull and boring about like learning vocabulary and getting to know it, but honestly, this is the core of the TOEFL. And if you master your reading and listening sections first, and you will be able to take them up to about like 27 or 28, well, maybe even higher than 26, you will be able to see that then when you're going to start cracking speaking and writing sections, you will feel much easier doing it because you will already know, and you will be able to like listen to the lecture and read it like any article in the speaking and then summarize them, what actually the integrated task asks us to do. So I'm just going to make some example of one of my students who is right now preparing for TOEFL with me. So he actually, I gave him, I think I gave him some kind of homework, which was to refresh his knowledge of the volcanic vocabulary, so like vocabulary about volcanic eruptions and all this stuff. And there was a sentence which he met. There was something like, volcanoes also add nutrients to soils, creating perfect conditions for many crops. So please make attention and like pay attention to the word nutrients in the sentence. So it means something like minerals and other useful stuff. So my student was obviously not very happy with this task because he was like, oh my God, can we do something else? Like maybe can I do a test or write an essay, which looks much more useful for a person who is preparing. And I was like, no, really, you have to do this. And also besides, you have to write an essay and do a test. So he kind of, well, he wasn't really happy with this type of task, which he thought was quite unnecessary. So he decided to skip it. And at the same lesson, I think, no, it was the next lesson when we were checking his his homework. We actually, before we checked his homework, we came across an integrated speaking task, which asked him to talk about his, I think it was something about living like a healthy lifestyle. So something healthy is loaded with lots of nutrients which are necessary for your health. But the problem was that he didn't know the word nutrients. So he simply forgot it and he didn't pay attention to the reading. so which was about volcanoes, but actually it contained this word. So he said, I think he said something like beneficial materials. Yes, that like it means that healthy food is loaded with beneficial materials, which was like a total nonsense, because of course like no one is going to say so. So I was like, don't you remember you actually had this word in the small passage I gave you about volcanic eruptions? And he was like, yes, oh my gosh, I don't remember that. So, well, I actually made this example to demonstrate that sometimes, although it seems that all the sections are quite different, they are basically linked together. And if you, I don't know, if you practice and if you're learning the vocabulary, if you are doing your reading and listening, it means that your speaking and writing will improve simultaneously. Of course, you will also have to work on it afterwards, but it doesn't mean that do it separately, like you invest some time into reading, then invest some time into listening, and then some time into writing, and you just do it once again. Like, so my advice is that you start with reading and listening, and you master it. You start to take it to the level of about like 26 and higher. And then you start doing like practicing your writing and speaking sections. So you start, I don't know, doing all this integrated and independent speaking tasks. You start writing essays, etc. So right now, just a few words about how I was preparing, like, and boosting my vocabulary while I had this 5 days to prepare for my test. So first of all, I used synonym lists, which is basically you write something like, for example, better equals advantageous equals beneficial. Or, I don't know, to increase equals to raise equals they are really helpful because they will definitely assist you to avoid repetitions when you are writing an essay or when you are talking, for example. So when you are writing an essay, there are lots of different questions like, is it better to bring up children in rural environment or is it better to bring them in urban environment, for example? And then you start paraphrasing, and you have the first sentence to write, and you basically need to paraphrase the statement. So if you are going to say, okay, it's better, and then you start writing your sentence, it's not going to be considered a paraphrase. And if you start thinking like, oh my God, what can I say? What is the synonym of the word better? Like, okay, it's better, what can I say? So then you are going to lose so much time, and you need to spend about 5 minutes on writing your introduction. So it actually saved me lots of time on reading, as well as it also gave me, I think, a huge bonus on speaking, because when you are talking, like once again you say like, okay, I think that leading a healthy lifestyle is much more beneficial for you because, and you give these 2 reasons. So for example, let's take that in the task we have a question, what's more advantageous? So you do not simply say the same thing in your answer, but you paraphrase it somehow, and it shows to an examiner that you are able to talk, you are able to paraphrase, and you're quite familiar with English synonyms. So this was the first thing, like just use synonym lines. This is the first thing you have to do. And the second thing I actually did was I studied not only like simple words, but I studied different parts of speech. And I'm going to illustrate it. So for example, everyone knows the words like such as beauty, beautiful, and beautifully. But I'm sure that much less people know the use and the meaning of the words to beautify, for example. Well, maybe they even know it, but they can't come up with this verb when they need it. So the verb to beautify, or for example, a noun beautician. And this was quite a simple example, but when it comes to more different parts of speech, sometimes it may be that, I don't know, the noun has one meaning and the verb is going to have exactly the opposite meaning, although they have the same root. And it's always a tricky question, especially on reading, because sometimes you may think, okay, yeah, so for example, this word comes from the noun, which I know the meaning of the noun, but the meaning of the verb may be like exactly the opposite. So in this case, it's like it was very useful, and I actually remember that it helped me much on the reading section. And the third thing I did to boost my vocabulary was that while I was doing the tests, so I actually downloaded all this EDS materials and cracking the TOEFL, and I actually recommend you using online CDs that they provide, and not to waste your time on different tips and tricks that they write in all this, I don't know, 400 pages books, because they give you so many advice there that you just won't be able to concentrate on the reading and like on the listening. So for example, I just had one student who told me like, okay, you know, I mastered about like 5 books like this. I read all their tips, advice, and like for this question, you are supposed to do this. For this question, you are supposed to imply this strategy. And then he told me that he took the test something like, well, I think it was like something like 78, 79, so closer to 80, but still it wasn't enough for him. He wanted to get like a score of 100 and higher. And the problem, he told me, the problem was that he was so concentrated on what technique to use that he did not really think about, okay, how to answer the question, like what am I supposed to know about this paragraph, what I'm supposed to write in this answer, etc. I don't really recommend you doing this. And my advice is, of course, everyone knows the strategy, like when you eliminate 2 answers and you are left with 2 other answers, and you will be able to kind of choose between those 2 options, which is quite much easier. And of course, we don't read the whole passage. Yeah, we simply scroll it. Some people recommend to read the first lines of the passage. I don't know. For me, I didn't use this technique because I thought that, okay, I'm going to start reading the first paragraph when I have the first question, so I don't really want to spend my time on understanding approximately what the text is about. But for some of my students, they say that it's quite a nice technique, and they use it sometimes because they just want to mentally prepare to what is going to wait for them. So what I was saying, actually done this, and I was doing the tests, and for example, like I was doing a reading test, and then I was doing a listening test. And while I was doing this test, I wrote down some of the words I met, I came across, and I didn't really know them, and they actually improved, like they got me to making mistakes. So I wrote them down, and then I translated them, and then I tried to use them in my essays just to practice. Not because I really needed them in my essays. I really tried to stuff my essays with these words, and it proved out to be really helpful and really useful for me, because on the exam, it turned out kind of event I actually belonged. So I had not a very simple type of my writing, so I used lots of interesting vocabulary there, and it actually helped me to get 29. So I think it was like one of the most helpful things. And what I see right now with my students, so some of them who try just to do the test and then forget about it, they get much worse results than the ones who try to write down these words, memorize them. Maybe it's going to be like 2, 3, 5 words. It doesn't have to be like, you know, thousands of words. And the same thing you do with articles, the same things you do with Khan Academy and TED Talks. So simply give yourself like 2 or 3 words to memorize from each piece of task you are doing. And then by the end of the day, you will have like approximately 10, 15 words that you knew and that you learned, and that you will be able to use in your future speakings and in your future writings. So I think that these are 3 tricks that enabled me to expand my vocabulary and consequently to drastically increase my score, my overall score. So right now, I also wanted to talk about, let's say you already mastered the reading and the listening sections, and or you just don't find them challenging from the beginning. Like, I'm going to make an example of what you can do with the other sections on the example of one of my students. He's originally from Norway, and he recently got his TOEFL score, which was about 100, I think it was 116. Yeah, it was 116. And he was like very happy with it. And the thing was that he did not have problems cracking reading or listening sections because he uses English at his work extensively. However, he had so many problems with he was simply to express his ideas in English, and he thought that he would never be able to come up with 2 reasons for independent task for 15 seconds and then to convey this information in 45 seconds. So he also found it quite difficult to speak fluently, and he had some problems with pronunciation and with clarity. So what we did, first of all, I recommended him to read different articles out loud on various topics just to polish his declamational skills. So like, honestly, say you do a piece of an article and then you read it and you read it out loud. Sometimes if you find a speaker who's going to be saying the same things, meanwhile you read it, it's also going to be perfect. But even if you just try, because we don't practice this in everyday life, and it means that sometimes our pronunciation, and not even pronunciation, but our speech is not that clear. So it's going to make a huge difference on TOEFL, because the TOEFL examiner, like, let's say if he or she has any problems understanding you, or I don't know, like if they're just going to make an effort understanding you, they can give you like 22 to 23 instead of the 26 you were aiming at. So it's really a useful exercise to do, and it doesn't take you much time. Let's say you just woke up and you have like about 10 minutes, 10 spare minutes. So you print out some article, or you just find it on the internet and then you read it, and you will be able to see that your declamation skills are going to be significantly improved. The second thing that we did with him was that I actually asked him to record his speaking answers, especially for but integrated with as well. So he actually recorded. He was able to notice some like the grammar problems that he was making, and also he was able to come up with better reasons that he made like in the independent tasks. So it means that he had like 2 recordings. First of all, he recorded just spontaneously out of the blue. He simply gave himself like 15 seconds, and then he tried to speak during 45 seconds, and then he stopped it exactly when 45 seconds finished, and he listened to what he got. And he was like, oh my God, this was so horrible. I didn't have time to convey all the information. I didn't have time to give my reasons, etc. And then kind of 6 minutes, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 5 minutes, it depended on the type of the question, to work out his answer. So like to think of the reasons, to think of maybe some ways he could change his grammar, or he could change some of the vocabulary. Sometimes if he didn't know the words, he could look them up. And then he tried to record the second recording, and this recording had to be like kind of a perfect recording that he was thinking of. It really helped us to make a huge improvement, because first of all, I was being able to listen to the reality that we have, and secondly, I was able to correct some of his ideal thoughts about how his answer should look like. So I would say like, okay, really, these examples are not really perfect, or you didn't give enough personal details, etc. A really cool thing that you can do. And the third thing that I really recommend to do with speaking is that you should definitely work on the pitch. And the pitch is basically the rise and fall of the voice when you are talking, and it basically creates intonation. So on TOEFL, your pronunciation may not be perfect. In fact, I had students who scored like 110 and higher, and their pronunciation was not good at all. And on the other hand, like I had students who came to me and who told me like, oh, you know, I have been living in the United States for, I don't know, about a year, and Of course, usually they were living in a family, in their family with their relatives, so it meant they did not talk too much with natives. So I think that if you go on a trip with linguatrip.com, for example, you are going to be immersed in this linguistic atmosphere, so you will have to interact with teachers, etc. So it's going to be a completely different experience. But with my students, they would just go to visit their relatives, or I don't know, they would communicate only with their native peers. They went to some kind of a language school. So they came after a year and they told me that, okay, like we were certain that we would get about 26 or higher on TOEFL speaking. And actually we got about like 20, 22, 23. Very upset. It seemed very strange for them that they did not get the right score. So it basically means that the TOEFL examiner is not really interested in your pronunciation. Well, he actually is if you want to get like 30 out of 30. But if you are aiming on like 27, 28, you can actually get it without having like a perfect pronunciation, like an American pronunciation or a British pronunciation. You can simply get it if an examiner is going to understand every word that you say. So your speech has to be like crystal clear and you have to pronounce every word exactly. The examiner is going to be able to understand it. And so finally, my student scored 28 out of 30, and he was like incredibly happy with his result. And this was basically because he was doing these tips like every day. And this is one of the most important rules if you want to take TOEFL, especially if you have like only several days to prepare. You have to do it every day. So it means that if you start preparing, you need to be preparing like not one day and then you leave it for a few more days, then you start preparing. So you have to do it. Invest about 2, well, 3, well, even 1 hour a day would be great, and you will see that your results are going to highly improve. And also, one more thing that I actually can think of while you are doing your speaking section is that I got it counterintuitively, because when I was taking the speaking test myself, I came about, I think about like 5 minutes earlier on this break, and I heard other students starting their speaking section, and I heard how they were sounding, and they were talking like, you know, like they were just robots. So it meant that, for example, there was a guy who was talking about, I think the question was about what is the best weekends, and he was saying something like, personally, I really like to go to theater on weekends because like first, second, and he gave his reasons. So this sounded so unnatural that I just thought that, okay, I need to change it and I need to sound enthusiastic and really excited about what I'm talking. I changed it, and then I talked with lots of examiners who were evaluating TOEFL, and they actually told me that yes, it creates some kind of an attitude for an examiner. If your delivery is smooth and fluent, so if you sound confident, it means that your examiner will believe that you can actually express your ideas, like express your opinion in English. You can do it, and you don't feel stressed out or nervous. And it will also just simply project a positive image of your response, because just imagine if you are just sitting and listening to people and students making their answers, and excited about what they're talking about. Which means it makes a huge difference when you listen to someone who seems basically relaxed about what he's saying and actually interested in what he's saying. This is another thing that you can practice at home, because actually that was a bit challenging for me to change it, everything, like to change my pace and to change my attitude towards what I was saying on the TOEFL, like at the exam itself. But still, it was possible, and you could practice it at home, and it's just going to be like a really cool practice for you. So as for the writing section, while preparation, I made sure that I used as many transitional phrases however, moreover, I don't know, in addition, etc. And conjunctions such as like and, but, so, as well as complex sentences. And a complex sentence is when you have two grammatic structures. So, for example, I came home late and my parents were cooking dinner. So I came home late, this is one grammatical structure, and dinner, this is the other. So this is going to be a complex sentence. So make sure you use these transitional sentences, you use conjunctions, and you use complex sentences. Because this is going to make about 15% of your total score, so it's worth trying it. Also, what I really recommend doing is when I was preparing on my own, as I was preparing on my own, I actually used a very nice program which is called Word Count. So it basically calculates the number of words you have. And I first found it because I wanted to calculate the words, and then it also checks some of your vocabulary and grammar. And also it gives you your level, like the level of your writing. So it may say that, okay, the level of your writing is of 11th or 12th grade student, high school student, or it may be of a college student, or it may be like, I don't know, of like a professor, a university professor. So for taking TOEFL, it's enough to get like a college student level of writing. And it also gives you an opportunity to invest and to explore the amount of words you use that repeat more than twice. So it just simply writes down like, okay, people like 5 times, I don't know, students 3 times, etc. So naturally, of course, it's better to prepare with some specialist who will be able to correct your coherence and cohesion, which means like how logical your essay is. But if you don't have such an opportunity, or if you just have like, I don't know, lots of time and you want to start preparing yourself, you can use this program, and this is just like really, really useful. The another thing that I also used was, and I really strongly recommend using, is to use idiomatic expressions. So some sayings or proverbs. For example, like, it's better to travel than to arrive, which means that for people, the process of anticipation is always much more pleasant than the result itself. Or while you are speaking, it's really good to use some colloquial expressions such as, oh, it's still fresh in my mind. Or you can say, I don't know, to take the plunge, or to take its toll on someone, which means like if you're giving, I don't know, night classes at 3 p.m., which I sometimes do, it may start to take toll on you. And you can also say something like, to cut a long story short, if you are given your independent task speaking. So you can use some of these expressions, and it's also going to be really useful, and it will just be a special bonus for you. The examiner will be able to understand that you can use phrasal verbs, you can use, I don't know, some proverbs, you know, English idiomatic expressions, like you can use them in the introduction or in conclusion for the TOEFL test. So, well, I think that was it for today, because we also have to answer the questions. I hope that you found this advice useful, and if you are interested in taking TOEFL right now, or you are preparing for it, just feel free to contact me and ask your questions. I will be more than happy to help you. And right now, I think we can answer some of the.
We can do some Q&A. Thank you, Anastasia, so much. It's a great story. I think if you are guys looking to take TOEFL anytime soon, you should like re-listen to it if you missed any parts, because I think personal experience is the most important in preparation for TOEFL. And as I said, Anastasia is one of our teachers, and there's a link below this video where you can actually book classes with her. And we received, I think 2 days ago, we received another review when somebody scored like 118 on TOEFL, which is great. So I wanted to, hey, is 100 a decent score? Yes, 100 is a very decent score. Okay, Anastasia, tell us where you're from.
I'm from Russia. Yes, originally I'm from Moscow, but then I have the different countries that I kind of stopped feeling myself a Russian person. So in fact, I lived in Italy. Right now I'm living in Spain. I also lived in Israel for some time, and of course I lived in the United States of America, but yeah, actually originally I'm from Russia.
Cool. Yeah, yeah, she speaks like 5 different languages. Okay, next. Any app? Oh, there were loads of questions about apps that we can recommend. So I would recommend just going to the App Store and just typing in TOEFL or Android Store, whatever you're using. Also for me, I think, yeah, there's this TOEFL app with a white head of a guy on a blue. So this is the one I've used for training vocabulary, and I also so I bought a lot of books online. I had a Kaplan book, and they had like free tests together with the book, which were really, really useful. And what else? Tons of app like Vocab Booster. I would say like if you are limited on time, like if your test is like in a week, then definitely use the apps. If your test is like 2 or 3 months ahead of you, then I would just concentrate on improving your English, because TOEFL is the test that tests your English, not I don't know, there is not like a list of words that you can encounter on TOEFL. It's just English words. What is your opinion on that, Anastasia? I mean, about you disappeared. Oops.
Yeah, I also think that if you have like your time for preparation, this time they also in volume 2, and they're really close to what you are going to have on TOEFL, especially for integrated essays. Like really important, because some of the preparation books, they don't have the right structure of the integrated essay, so it's like very important to practice with the materials that are going to be exactly the same then when you're going to be taking the exam. So yeah, I would recommend to download the EDS programs like TOEFL Official Guide and Volume 1, Volume 2. These are read books. You can also buy or even download them online for free. I think like there are some websites.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And also watch YouTube videos. I have like maybe 10 videos on TOEFL, like my overall experience, what to do if you have just 1 week left until TOEFL, what to do when you are, I don't know, like a month ahead. So the different kinds of videos. Can you guide me how to improve my speaking? So my opinion would be the only way to improve your speaking is to practice, because anything that you want to improve, you just need to practice. And I would recommend taking classes with a native speaker. I think this is the only way, like recording something at home and then sending it to a teacher and then connecting with the teacher on Skype, like with Anastasia, for example, and listening to her feedback. Because this is really the only way. For me, what worked, so I had like 2 weeks to prepare for TOEFL, and I would say I was pretty good at speaking, so I didn't have any problems communicating my thoughts in English. But the problem with TOEFL is that you have to speak to a computer. This is the first problem. And the second problem is that they give you like really weird topics that you would never ever use in your life. And what I've done is that I just made the speaking part 8 times in a row, and this was it about my preparation. So I just learned the structure, learned the connecting words. Actually, I didn't learn them, I just remembered that I have to use them all the time. And then I had some templates for every question, like templates with those connecting words, and I just memorized them by heart. So when I came and saw the question, I knew exactly the structure of my answer. What would you add here?
Yeah, I think that it's actually like you gave lots of useful advice. So that's probably it. And basically, if I don't know, an opportunity to have a native speaker, which is actually like the best opportunity to you. But I would also recommend just talking on your own, just making these recordings of your speech and evaluating it then. But of course, this means that sometimes you won't be able to kind of see some of the vocabulary or grammar problems you have. So of course, it's better to have someone to evaluate it at least like once or twice if you like don't have an opportunity to do it. Because the person who knows the structure will be able to give you exactly the tips like why you can't score higher. For example, if you have problems with your score on the speaking.
Mm-hmm. Another question is which test is better, TOEFL or IELTS? This is really up to you guys. I would say almost every university accepts both. I think Harvard doesn't accept IELTS still. I don't know whether the situation changed for this year, but yes, before they wouldn't accept IELTS. For me, there are two differences between these tests. The first difference is that IELTS is a British exam, so you would hear British speaking. TOEFL is an American exam, so you will hear American speaking. The second difference is that IELTS is actually in 2 days. So the first day you come and do your reading, listening, and writing part, and then the next day you come to do your speaking. TOEFL is just one day exam, 3 hours, you sit down and you do it. And the third difference, sorry, in IELTS you talk to a real person, which is psychologically easier. In TOEFL you would have to speak to your computer, so just talking to the screen, which is not a natural situation in your life. And Anastasia actually took both tests, so I think you would be able to answer or to add anything on this question.
Yeah, well, as far as speaking is concerned, I think that it really depends, because I had students who, for example, felt very embarrassed or shy to be talking to a real person, so they preferred and opted for the option where they just simply had to talk with computer. And on the other hand, like if you find it difficult to come up with 15 seconds and then speaking for 45 seconds, of course, you should definitely take TOEFL. In my opinion, considering like the reading and the listening structures, I actually find that TOEFL I think easier on IELTS because you don't have to learn so many words, so many extra vocabulary. It's more like the vocabulary that you use in everyday life. And even though there are some tasks, like some sections where you need to know all the vocabulary. But on the other hand, yes, like with the speaking, if you feel, I don't know, or if you opt for more scientific vocabulary, if you studied somewhere, it means the TOEFL is going to be a better option for you. Yeah, as the templates, you can always have like a good answers on your speaking, while when you talk with an examiner, you never know what this is a tricky thing.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, I think the connection is like really bad and stops every minute. I'm so sorry, guys. This is the internet. But yeah, there is another question. My score is 63. I have been preparing for 8 months. So again, when you find yourself preparing for TOEFL for like 4 or 5 months already, I think you should tell yourself to stop and actually do general English class. Because again, TOEFL is a test that tests your English language knowledge, not how long you have been preparing for taking the TOEFL test. So if your score is 63, that means that your level is intermediate right now. And I would suppose that for your university, you would need around maybe 100, I don't know, 90, depends on the university. So here you would just need to stop with your TOEFL preparation, get a general English course. It can be at home, it can be somewhere abroad, like traveling to the UK to take a general English course, or the States. That's what I'd recommend because it would take faster. Then take a general English course, end up in upper intermediate group and become like really good at upper intermediate level or like pre-advanced. And this is time to go back to your TOEFL preparation. And I would guarantee you, once you are upper intermediate / advanced, your TOEFL preparation should not take longer than 4 weeks, I would say, is maximum for TOEFL preparation, because the purpose of the preparation for the test itself is not to learn English from scratch. It's not to learn grammatical structures. It's not to learn how to write an essay. The whole point of preparation is actually just understanding what kind of tasks are there in TOEFL and understanding how you handle them. So please, please, please stop right now and just brush up your English. Okay, let me see. Yeah, the connection's bad. I know, I'm so sorry, guys. Which score do you consider fluent? So it's not the question that you have to ask me. Like, there's a standard thing that for a university, you would need around 80, 85, and that will be fine. Does IELTS have the same validity as TOEFL in the United States? As I said, TOEFL, like if you're aiming for the United States, take TOEFL, and you will get like 100% chance that it's accepted everywhere. With IELTS, there are some exclusions. With IELTS, you can actually find a university that does not accept it. So I would say TOEFL 100%. if you are applying to several universities and some of them are in Europe or especially in Great Britain, then IELTS would be a better option. Anastasia, what was the program you said about to find out words you repeat twice? Did you get the question?
Oh, okay, yeah. I got the question. The program was word count. So you simply type it in the internet, like word count, and you will see this program. It's actually not even a program, but a website. You can paste your text there, and you will see like the level of your writing, as well as how many words were repeated and for how many times. So yeah, it's word count.
Okay, word count is the website. All right, my connection is good. Oh, thanks God, somebody's connection is still good. Somebody's from Paris. Good afternoon, how are you doing today? We are very good, thank you so much. Okay, there was some questions as well about TOEFL. Let me just find them. The chat is so big. I just got my scores. I got 117. Your videos helped a lot. Thank you. Wow, this is great. Great to hear that. Actually, every day somebody would write a comment below my video about TOEFL saying how much they scored, and I feel so proud. That's so exciting. Okay, let's see what else is there. I'm an American, but I was studying in another country, so I had to take the exam. I was quite nervous. Yeah, the exam itself, actually my American friend tried to do the speaking part with me, and then he realized how hard it was. Again, it's about preparation, and I would say like 4 weeks maximum, you would get all of the structures, you would know what's going on in the video, in the exam. Okay. What websites or books can you recommend for preparing? We already answered that. Okay. Let me see. Where are you from? Okay. We're both from Russia then. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just scrolling down all of the questions. Is there any extra way to take this exam? For example, give extra money? I'm sorry, guys. No. This is not how the world works. When did you have your TOEFL? I took my TOEFL in January 2015. What about you, Anastasia? When was your TOEFL?
I took it in 213, yeah.
2013, okay.
No, 2000, yes, sorry, 2013.
Yeah. Okay, the connect. Okay, how to get a fee waiver? There is no fee waiver for TOEFL, guys, unfortunately, but there is an opportunity scholarship. It is provided by the Education USA company in the it's not in the United States, it's in your country. So they work together with American consulates, and they have grants. It's called Opportunity Grant that can sponsor you taking a TOEFL exam. But you have to prove that you are eligible for full financial aid in the States. So it's a little complicated, but yes. If university requires 105, but it's a real for that time, can I apply and just explain the situation to them? I'm sorry, but no. Normally, if the university requires 105, even if your score is 104, they wouldn't even consider your application. So if it's 105, then this is the minimum that you can do, unfortunately. Well, Nasser, if you have given GCSE O level. So some universities have a rule. They say if you have 2 years of education in English, then they can waive your TOEFL requirements. So you can just go and apply just like that. But you have to talk to each particular university. Sometimes they just say, I'm sorry, but no. I want to live in the USA. Do you think the university is very expensive? Universities in the USA are very expensive. The average would be like, well, $20,000 in tuition fees a year. How to get a scholarship for a master? In my video, how I studied, how I got into American universities and got a full ride scholarship. It's one of my first videos on this channel, and I talk a lot about how this all happens. Some tips for speaking and writing parts. I don't know, give like some extra tips in addition to what you've already mentioned.
About writing
part.
About writing part.
Writing and speaking, yes.
Speaking parts, I think that as for the writing part, I would recommend also to, first of all, to get very common with the structure of the integrated task. So For example, as I said, that provides you with the wrong tips of the structure. So if you know the structure, as well as if you have a really nice template, for example, I actually worked out the template for myself while I was preparing. So in all of these moments when I had to say like the author states this and the lecturer states this, I actually thought of the synonyms I may use. So I had something like the lecturer contends that, the author knows this, etc. So a list of different synonyms in order not to be struggling for the synonyms on the test. And I think it really worked well for me because I simply needed to insert the information given in the text and in the lecture, and I already had a very nice template. So it means that you just have to think for one time and write it down and maybe think of the synonyms you may use. As another thing is you have to be very logical in the independent essay. For example, if you are going to start saying that, okay, I don't know, it's better to raise, as I said, it's better to raise children in the countryside than in the city, and you start making some examples that are not really relevant, is going to make your score lower. So just make sure, I usually recommend my students to imagine that they are examiners and they are evaluating their essays. So they just simply have to see that all their ideas correspond with each other. And another thing that you can also do is include quite a huge personal example, like about 4 or 5 sentences in each paragraph, in each reason you are talking about. So I also have like a special structure for writing this independent essay. But the thing is that you have to start with your reason, then you give about 2 or 3 sentences like generally, and then a sentence and which is like, for example, my personal example of this, or for instance, or for example, you give your personal example from 5 sentences. This means that the examiner will be able to see that you you kind of understood the topic of the test and you made a very, very clear explanation and you gave your personal details. So the same thing applies to the speaking. While you're answering the question, I don't know why you prefer to go outside than to stay inside on the weekend. Not to say that I prefer this and don't like to do this, or you have to do this. So it's better to avoid these generalities and simply give your personal opinion and to be very subjective. So you have to use like me, my, I as much as possible.
Yeah, so try to think of real stories all the time. And sometimes people ask me whether they can lie about situations, like in speaking, when you're answering a question, or in writing, when you're writing an essay. If you do not have a story that happened to you, think about your friends, think about your family, have a story connected. I don't know, like if they ask, I think my essay was something connected with like, which education is better, mathematics or this? I don't really remember the exact topic, but I tried to, so I started in mathematics, but I had a friend who studied languages, and I just started comparing myself to my friend. So try to think of something personal. What do you think about Canadian universities? Canadian universities are great. There are not a lot of them. Canada is really good for colleges, not for universities. But yeah, why not? Okay. To the Fulbright program for 1 year doctoral research. I will sit for TOEFL shortly. Do I need to get a really high score to be accepted for the postdoc? Yeah, I need to check universities that you shortlisted for your program, but I would say 90 plus. Yes, definitely, maybe as well. Was it difficult for your lectures in literature in university? Again, so the TOEFL score that they ask for should be you to understand what's going on during the lecture. But of course, you will have some difficulties. It depends on every single person. Every single person is different in terms of understanding what's going on. But I would say if your TOEFL score is good enough, then you're pretty much at the level that is needed to understand the lectures. My college requires 84 plus, and I'm taking my test this month. Congrats. Or like, fingers crossed. I'm so scared it will be hard. It is hard to reach the score. Just take the test several times at home and see how it works. and then you're gonna be able to, like, if you take your test at home and then you score 15 every time on your reading part, then maybe it's not the best time to go and take the actual test. Maybe it's time to study more. So you will always be able to see your potential score. Anastasia, what's the name? Oh, what was the name of the webpage where you mentioned at the very beginning of the video where you learned vocabulary on various topics? Do you remember? What was that?
An Academy. And this is a very useful website because they provide videos for how to help them explain and understand some subjects, like, I don't know, physics or chemistry, etc. So if you simply type Khan Academy, you will see it. They have very nice videos there, and you can simply listen to them, not even write down all the words and all the vocabulary you come across, but just to understand what is the topic about. So once again, if you understand exactly, approximately about what's going on, it's going to be much easier for you to get the right score and to answer the question correctly.
Yeah, Khan Academy is a very good resource. They also have a YouTube channel, and Khan is I don't remember his name, but when I was at Stanford, we had like a lecture about him. This was like a trial lecture, and Khan is actually a guy from the Silicon Valley, and he started teaching maths to Bill Gates' children, and then Bill Gates was so excited about him, he recommended him to all of his friends, and then all of his friends wanted him to teach his kids maths, and this is how this guy realized he doesn't have a lot of time. So he quit his job to teach kids, and then he started thinking, like, how can I teach all of the kids in the world? And this is how he started free YouTube. I think he started with videos. He started with free videos on YouTube on different topics. He started with maths, and then he thought, wow, I could do any subject. So Khan Academy is like a free resource where you can get information about anything in the world, I would say, which regards to like school program. Definitely check it out, especially for vocabulary on different topics like geography or whatever. If I scored 92 in TOEFL, but I needed 100, how do you think I could improve my score? You need to look at the sections that are weaker than you thought. Maybe you could do it with Anastasia as well. There is a link below to book a lesson with her. Sections that are lower. So for example, if it was speaking, then you need to speak. If it was reading, then you need to practice maybe some reading tips. But again, yeah, you should concentrate on whichever part was the weakest in your test. I will be doing university in Canada. After university, do you think you can work in the United States? So your Canadian education doesn't really give you any work permit for the States. So if your goal is to work in the United States, then I think you should start with your education in the States. If you want to work in Canada, then get your education in Canada. It's as easy as that. Okay, guys. I think that was it for today. I just wanted to thank you all for joining us. I'm so sorry for the connection. I will make sure that the next Tuesday we're going to have a better one. And I wanted to thank Anastasia for joining us today. Thank you so much for adding to this lesson. Thank you so much for helping me out. Cool. Guys, again, thank you so much. I will see you next Tuesday, 12 p.m. California time. Thank you so much for joining today, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.